Job.
First impressions. Chancellor Duncan, President Chovanec, Speaker Perrin, Dean Dickerson, professors, distinguished guests, friends and family, and soon-to-be newly minted barristers. Thank you for the honor to speak today's graduation. When I started thinking about what I wanted to say today, I realized that everyone is already giving us very good advice. We get good advice from our friends and family, and we're getting good advice from our practitioners already practicing, and our professors have diligently spent the last 3 years desperately trying to beat good advice into our heads. As attorneys, we will be called upon by the rest of our community to give good advice. But what would we know good advice is if we don't have anything to weigh it against? Specifically, what is a mountain without a valley? So I wanted to do my speech today on bad advice. I've spent the last several weeks going around and asking distinguished practitioners and judges, even a Supreme Court justice, about bad advice. My question to them was this: what's the worst advice you ever got? What's the worst advice did you follow that at the time you thought it was good advice, but turned out to be really bad advice? And as you can imagine, I got a variety of answers. And some were funny, and some were tragic, and some had nothing to do with the practice of law. The law hawk actually commented on the misfortune of my haircut and simply walked off. Through these interviews, though, I did find some common themes, and I wanted to share some with you. Local heavy hitter Ted Liggett and Judge Mark Hocker had almost exactly the same bad advice: ignore the golden rule. Both had tales of how, as young attorneys, they were told by superiors to put the screws to opposing counsel and really hold their feet to the fire. But now in hindsight, they each advised young attorneys not to make things worse than they have to be. Treat people well and fairly, because you soon may seem to be asking that person for a similar favor in return, or you might even be asking that person for a paycheck. Don't get sucked into the trap of litigating every issue to the hilt. Show mercy. Some of the professors, specifically my Hooding professor Brian Camp, gave the worst advice of follow money at all costs. He said many times you'll be asked to put your career before your family, and some of the worst advice he ever followed was doing just that. No amount of money will ever replace your kid's soccer game or memorable family times. Your career and promotions can wait. Don't follow the bad advice of only seeking financial treasures. Be happy. A Texas Supreme Court justice, who refused to allow me to name him in a speech titled Bad Advice, told me that one of his mentors advised him early in his career that he did not always need to be prepared for court, because after all, it was just a JP case or a small claims court case. Unfortunately, he has since learned otherwise. And don't follow the bad advice of overlooking preparation on small details. Always have the tools you need ready and prepared. Be prepared. And lastly, our own Judge Hatch, who many of us know and love, gave the worst advice I heard in all the interviews, and his advice was to expect a mentor. He said, Judge Hatch reflected that many graduate attorneys have a false sense of mentorship in the legal profession. He advised, don't presume utopia after graduation. Aggressively find and seek your own mentor and check in with them daily. Nobody's going to ask you about your cases or your problems unless you talk with them. Find a mentor. So in total, show mercy, be happy, be prepared, find a mentor. But if you take absolutely nothing away from what I've said today, well, as class captain, I got to say that's okay. Because all I did was give you bad advice. Thank you very much.